Imagine this. You're sitting in a crowded cafe, surrounded by the hum of conversation, the clinking of cups, and the occasional burst of laughter. Everyone seems connected, talking, smiling, sharing. But as you sit there, scrolling through your phone, you feel it. A quiet, gnawing ache in your chest, a sense of being utterly alone, even as you're surrounded by people. You glance up and for a moment you catch the eye of someone across the room. They're scrolling too, their face illuminated by the cold glow of their screen, and in that fleeting moment you see it, the same emptiness, the same quiet desperation. You look away, but the question lingers. How can we be so connected yet so profoundly lonely? This is the paradox of modern life. We live in an age of unprecedented connectivity. Social media platforms promise to bring us closer, to bridge the gaps between us. We have more friends and followers than ever before. Yet beneath the surface of this hyper-connected world lies a silent epidemic, a loneliness so pervasive, so insidious, that it has become the defining ailment of our time. Why is this happening? How can we, as a species so deeply wired for connection, find ourselves drowning in isolation? The answer is not as simple as blaming technology or the pace of modern life. It's deeper, darker, and far more unsettling. It's about the way we've been conditioned to live, to think, to relate to one another. It's about the stories we've been told about success, happiness, and fulfillment. Stories that have left us chasing shadows while the real thing slips through our fingers. Consider this. Loneliness is not just the absence of people. It's the absence of meaning. It's the feeling that no one truly sees you, understands you, or values you for who you are. And in a world that prioritizes productivity over presence, achievement over authenticity, and image over intimacy, is it any wonder that we feel this way? But here's the twist. Loneliness is not just a personal problem. It's a societal one. It's a symptom of a culture that has lost its way, a culture that has traded depth for convenience, vulnerability for performance, and connection for consumption. We've built a world that is designed to keep us busy, distracted, and perpetually unsatisfied. And in doing so, we've created a breeding ground for loneliness. So let's ask the uncomfortable questions. What if the very things we thought would bring us closer, our phones, our social networks, our endless pursuit of success, are actually driving us further apart? What if the cure for loneliness isn't more connection, but a different kind of connection? And what if, in our quest to avoid being alone, we've forgotten how to truly be with ourselves? These are not easy questions to answer. They force us to confront uncomfortable truths about who we are and the world we've created, but they also offer a glimmer of hope. Because if loneliness is a symptom of something deeper, then perhaps the solution lies in addressing the root cause. Perhaps it lies in redefining what it means to connect, to belong, to be human. As we delve into this exploration, keep this thought in mind. Loneliness is not a life sentence. It's a wake-up call. It's an invitation to look inward, to question the narratives we've been sold, and to rediscover what it means to truly connect, not just with others, but with ourselves. But before we can find the way out, we must first understand how we got here. What is it about modern society that breeds this pervasive sense of isolation? What forces, psychological, philosophical, and societal, have conspired to create a world where loneliness thrives? The answers may surprise you, they may unsettle you, but they will also illuminate a path forward, a path that leads not just away from loneliness, but toward a deeper, more meaningful way of living. So let's begin. Let's peel back the layers of this modern malaise and uncover the hidden forces that have brought us to this point. Because only by understanding the problem can we hope to find the solution. And trust me, what lies ahead is not just an exploration of loneliness. It's an exploration of what it means to be human in a world that has forgotten how to truly connect. To understand why modern society breeds loneliness, we must first confront a hard truth. Loneliness is not an accident. It is not a random byproduct of progress or a simple side effect of technology. It is the result of a series of deliberate, systemic shifts in how we live, think, and relate to one another. These shifts are rooted in psychological, philosophical, and societal forces that have been quietly shaping our world for decades. Forces that have turned loneliness into a silent epidemic. Let's start with psychology. Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist, once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." This insight cuts to the heart of the modern condition. We are surrounded by people, yet we struggle to express our deepest thoughts, fears, and desires. Why? Because modern life has conditioned us to wear masks, to present curated versions of ourselves that are palatable, polished, and perpetually on. This phenomenon, which Jung called the persona, is the social mask we wear to fit in, to be accepted, to avoid judgment. But here's the catch. The more we invest in our personas, the further we drift from our true selves. And the further we drift from our true selves, the more disconnected we feel, not just from others, but from ourselves. This is the psychological root of loneliness, a profound sense of alienation from our own authenticity. Now, let's turn to philosophy. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher who dared to question the foundations of morality and meaning, warned of the dangers of a society that prioritizes superficiality over depth. He saw modernity as a world obsessed with appearances, where individuals are reduced to mere cogs in a machine, endlessly chasing external validation. In large states, Nietzsche wrote, public education will always be mediocre, for the same reason that in large kitchens, the cooking is usually bad. Nietzsche's critique of modernity is eerily prescient. Today, we live in a world where value is often measured in likes, shares, and followers. A world where the self is commodified, reduced to a brand to be marketed and consumed. This commodification of identity creates a vicious cycle. The more we seek validation from external sources, the more we neglect our inner lives. And the more we neglect our inner lives, the emptier we feel. Arthur Schopenhauer, another philosopher who grappled with the human condition, offered a different but equally profound insight. He believed that human suffering stems from our endless desires, our constant striving for more. In a world that glorifies ambition and achievement, this insight is particularly relevant. We are told that success, wealth, and status will bring us happiness. Yet, the more we achieve, the more we crave. And the more we crave, the more we feel a sense of lack, a void that no amount of external success can fill. This brings us to the societal forces at play. Aldous Huxley, in his dystopian novel Brave New World, envisioned a society where people are kept docile and distracted by endless entertainment and consumption. Sound familiar? Today, we live in a world that is eerily reminiscent of Huxley's vision. A world where we are constantly bombarded with stimuli, yet starved of genuine connection. The rise of social media, for instance, has created the illusion of connection while eroding the foundations of real relationships. We scroll through endless feeds, consuming snippets of other people's lives, yet we rarely engage in meaningful conversations. We like and comment on posts, yet we struggle to express vulnerability or empathy. This shallow form of interaction leaves us feeling more isolated, not less. But the problem goes deeper than technology. It's about the values that underpin modern society. We live in a culture that prioritizes individualism over community, competition over collaboration, and consumption over creation. These values have reshaped our social fabric, turning relationships into transactions and communities into networks. Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist philosopher, famously declared, "Hell is other people." But what he meant was not that others are inherently toxic, but that we often define ourselves in relation to others, leading to a sense of alienation and conflict. In modern society, this alienation is amplified by the pressure to conform, to compete, and to constantly prove our worth. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, offered a different perspective. He believed that the root of human suffering lies in a lack of meaning. In his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl argued that we cannot thrive without a sense of purpose, a reason to endure, to connect, to create. Yet modern society often undermines this sense of purpose. We are told to chase happiness, but not how to cultivate meaning. We are encouraged to pursue success, but not how to build relationships that truly matter. So what does all this mean? It means that loneliness is not just a personal failing or a random misfortune. It is the inevitable result of a society that has lost touch with what it means to be human. It is the price we pay for living in a world that values productivity over presence, achievement over authenticity, and consumption over connection. But here's the twist. Loneliness is not just a problem. It's also a signal. It's a sign that something is deeply wrong, not just with our individual lives, but with the world we've created. And if we listen to this signal, if we dare to confront the forces that have brought us here, we may find a way out. The question is, are we willing to face the truth? Are we willing to question the narratives we've been sold, to challenge the values we've internalized, and to rediscover what it means to truly connect? The answers lie ahead. But first, we must confront the unseen consequences of this modern malaise, the ways in which loneliness silently shapes our personal and societal realities. Loneliness is not just a feeling. It is a force, a silent, insidious force that shapes our thoughts, behaviors, and even our biology. It infiltrates every aspect of our lives, often without us even realizing it. And its consequences are far more profound than we tend to acknowledge. Let's start with the personal. On a psychological level, loneliness distorts our perception of reality. It creates a feedback loop of negativity where we interpret social interactions through a lens of fear and mistrust. Studies have shown that lonely individuals are more likely to perceive neutral or even positive social cues as threatening. This hypersensitivity to rejection becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we expect to be rejected, the more we withdraw, and the more isolated we become. But the effects of loneliness go beyond perception. They seep into our very identity. When we feel disconnected from others, we begin to question our own worth. We internalize the belief that we are unlovable, unworthy, or fundamentally flawed. This erosion of self-esteem creates a vicious cycle. The worse we feel about ourselves, the harder it becomes to reach out, and the more entrenched our loneliness grows. And then there's the physical toll. Loneliness doesn't just hurt emotionally, it hurts physically. Research has shown that chronic loneliness can lead to a weakened immune system, increased inflammation, and a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. It's as if the body itself is crying out for connection, and when that connection is denied, it begins to break down. But the consequences of loneliness are not limited to the individual. They ripple outward, shaping the very fabric of society. Loneliness breeds division. It fosters a sense of us versus them, where we see others as competitors or threats rather than potential allies. This divisiveness undermines social cohesion, making it harder for communities to come together and solve collective problems. In a world where loneliness is rampant, trust erodes. We become more suspicious, more defensive, more inclined to see the worst in others. This erosion of trust has profound implications for democracy, for social justice, for the very idea of a shared humanity. When we cannot trust one another, we cannot work together. And when we cannot work together, we cannot create a better world. Loneliness also fuels consumerism. In our search for connection, we often turn to material possessions, hoping that the latest gadget, the trendiest clothes, or the most luxurious car will fill the void. But of course, they never do. Instead, they leave us feeling emptier, more dissatisfied, and more desperate for the next fix. This cycle of consumption not only perpetuates loneliness, but also contributes to environmental degradation, economic inequality, and a host of other societal ills. And then there's the impact on creativity and innovation. Loneliness stifles creativity because creativity thrives on connection, on the exchange of ideas, the spark of collaboration, the friction of differing perspectives. When we are isolated, our thinking becomes narrow, repetitive, and stagnant. We lose the ability to see beyond our own limited experience, to imagine new possibilities, to dream of a better future. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of loneliness is its effect on meaning. Viktor Frankl argued that meaning is essential to human flourishing. Yet, in a lonely world, meaning becomes elusive. We struggle to find purpose in our work, in our relationships, in our lives. We feel adrift, disconnected not just from others, but from something larger than ourselves. This crisis of meaning has profound implications for mental health. Without a sense of purpose, we are more vulnerable to depression, anxiety, and despair. We are more likely to turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms, substance abuse, compulsive behaviors, or even self-harm in a desperate attempt to numb the pain. And yet, despite all this, loneliness remains a taboo subject. We are quick to pathologize it, to treat it as a personal failing rather than a societal problem. We tell ourselves that if we just try harder, if we just put ourselves out there, we can overcome it. But this individualistic approach ignores the systemic forces at play. It places the burden of solving loneliness on the shoulders of the lonely rather than addressing the root causes. So, what are we to do? How do we break free from this cycle of isolation and despair? The answer lies not in superficial solutions, more social media, more networking events, more self-help books, but in a radical reimagining of what it means to connect. But before we can explore that reimagining, we must first confront the full extent of the problem. We must understand how loneliness shapes not just our personal lives, but our collective reality. Only then can we begin to envision a way out. The first step in breaking free from the grip of loneliness is to recognize that it is not an inevitable condition. It is not a life sentence, nor is it a reflection of your worth. Loneliness is a signal, a call to action. It is an invitation to question the narratives we've been sold, to challenge the systems that perpetuate isolation, and to reclaim our capacity for genuine connection. But how do we do this? How do we rebel against a culture that thrives on disconnection? The answer lies in a radical shift in perspective, one that requires us to confront uncomfortable truths and embrace counterintuitive solutions. Let's start with the most fundamental truth. Connection begins with yourself. This may sound paradoxical, but it is essential. You cannot truly connect with others if you are disconnected from yourself. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He believed that the path to wholeness, what he called individuation, requires us to confront our shadow, to integrate the parts of ourselves that we have disowned or repressed. This process is not easy. It requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. but it is also profoundly liberating. When we stop running from ourselves, when we embrace our flaws, our fears, our contradictions, we begin to feel more whole. And in that wholeness, we find the capacity for authentic connection. So how do we start this journey of self-reconnection? Begin by carving out moments of solitude, not the kind of solitude that involves scrolling through your phone or binge-watching TV, but the kind that allows for introspection and reflection. Spend time in nature, journal your thoughts, meditate, or simply sit in silence. These moments of stillness are not a luxury, they are a necessity. They are the soil in which self-awareness grows. Next, challenge the narratives that have shaped your understanding of connection. Modern society tells us that connection is about quantity, more friends, more followers, more likes. But true connection is about quality. It is about depth, not breadth. It is about being seen, heard, and understood for who you truly are. This means letting go of the need to perform, to impress, to conform. It means showing up as your authentic self, even when it feels risky. As Brené Brown, the researcher and author, has famously said, "Vulnerability is the birthplace of connection." It is only when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to share our fears, our struggles, our imperfections, that we create the possibility for real intimacy. But vulnerability is not enough on its own. We must also cultivate presence. In a world that glorifies multitasking and constant busyness, presence is a radical act. It means putting down your phone, turning off the TV, and truly listening, not just to the words someone is saying, but to the emotions behind them. It means being fully engaged in the moment, rather than mentally rehearsing your next response or worrying about what others think. Presence is not just a gift to others, it is a gift to yourself. When you are fully present, you experience life more deeply. You notice the subtle beauty of a shared smile, the warmth of a genuine conversation, the quiet joy of simply being with someone you care about. Of course, cultivating presence and vulnerability requires a supportive environment. This is where community comes in, but not just any community. A community that values authenticity, empathy, and mutual support. Seek out people who inspire you, who challenge you, who make you feel seen and valued, and be that person for others. This may require stepping outside your comfort zone. It may mean joining a new group, attending a workshop, or simply reaching out to someone you admire. It may mean having difficult conversations, setting boundaries, or letting go of toxic relationships. But the effort is worth it, because in the end, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your relationships. And here's the most counterintuitive truth of all. Sometimes, the best way to combat loneliness is to embrace it. This doesn't mean resigning yourself to isolation. It means recognizing that loneliness is a natural part of the human experience. It is a reminder of your need for connection, your capacity for love, your longing for meaning. When you stop running from loneliness, when you sit with it, explore it, even welcome it, you begin to understand its deeper message. You begin to see that loneliness is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It is calling you to reconnect with yourself, with others, with the world around you. So, take the first step. Reach out to someone you care about. Share something real, something vulnerable. Put down your phone and look someone in the eye. These small acts of rebellion may seem insignificant, but they are the seeds of a larger transformation. And remember, you are not alone in this. Millions of people are waking up to the reality of modern loneliness. They are questioning the status quo, seeking deeper connections, and redefining what it means to belong. Together, we can create a new culture, one that prioritizes authenticity over performance, presence over productivity, and connection over consumption. But this rebellion is not just about personal change. It is about societal transformation. It is about challenging the systems and structures that perpetuate loneliness. The economic systems that prioritize profit over people, the social systems that reward conformity over creativity, the cultural systems that value image over integrity. This is not an easy task. It requires courage, persistence, and collective action. But it is also an opportunity to create a world where loneliness is no longer the norm, where connection is not a luxury, but a birthright. So let's begin. Let's rebel against the forces that divide us. Let's reclaim our capacity for connection, for meaning, for love. And let's build a world where no one has to feel alone. Here it is, the heart of the matter, the truth that changes everything. Loneliness is not the absence of others. It is the absence of yourself. This is the ultimate realization, the one that redefines how we see connection, belonging, and the very essence of what it means to be human. Loneliness is not about how many people are around you or how many friends you have on social media. It is about how deeply you are connected to your own soul. It is about whether you are living in alignment with your truth, your values, your purpose. When you feel lonely, it is not because the world has abandoned you. It is because you have abandoned yourself. You have traded your authenticity for approval, your depth for distraction, your presence for performance. You have forgotten who you are. But here's the good news. You can remember, you can come home to yourself. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. The loneliness begins to dissolve, not because others suddenly appear, but because you no longer need them to complete you. You realize that you are already whole. This is the paradox of connection. The more deeply you connect with yourself, the more capable you become of connecting with others. When you stop seeking validation from the outside world, you begin to radiate a quiet confidence, a magnetism that draws people to you. Not because you are perfect, but because you are real. This is what Carl Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. It is not a solitary journey, but a relational one. As you integrate the fragmented parts of yourself, you become more capable of authentic connection. You stop projecting your unmet needs onto others and start seeing them for who they truly are. And here's the most profound truth of all. Connection is not something you find. It is something you create. It is not a destination, but a way of being. It is the willingness to show up, to be present, to risk vulnerability. It is the courage to say, "This is me, this is my truth, and I am here with you." This is the antidote to loneliness. Not more friends, more followers, or more distractions, but more authenticity, more presence, more love. So, how do you begin? Start by asking yourself the hard questions. Who am I beneath the masks I wear? What do I truly value? What brings me joy, meaning, and fulfillment? These questions are not easy to answer, but they are essential. They are the keys to unlocking your true self. Next, practice radical self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness, patience, and understanding that you would offer a dear friend. Forgive yourself for your mistakes, your flaws, your imperfections. Remember that you are a work in progress, and that is okay. Then, take small steps toward connection. Reach out to someone you care about. Share something real, something vulnerable. Listen deeply without judgment or agenda. These small acts of courage may feel awkward at first, but they are the building blocks of genuine connection. And finally, remember this. You are not alone. Even in your darkest moments, even when the world feels cold and indifferent, you are part of something larger. You are part of a web of life, a tapestry of souls, each one searching for meaning, for connection, for love. This is the ultimate truth. We are all in this together. Your loneliness is not just your burden, it is a reflection of a deeper, collective, longing, and when you begin to heal yourself, you begin to heal the world. So take a deep breath. Feel the weight of this truth settle into your bones. You are not broken. You are not alone. You are a radiant, imperfect, beautiful human being, capable of love, of connection, of transformation, and the journey begins now.